All right. So, Cottom. Jamie, I realize that you and I have talked, and I don't know how to say your last name. So, if I said it wrong, you can correct me. But Jamie is the director of the Beaverhead Trails Coalition in Dillon, Montana. And Jamie, I'm just going to let you introduce yourself and dive in. Jamie's going to talk for a little bit about their work with Beaverhead Trails Coalition, and then we'll just open it up and have an open discussion afterwards.
Great. Um, as Michelle said, I am Jamie Cottom. It's just like cotton, but with an M, which makes it very confusing for some reason. Anyway, I'm out in Dillon, Montana, and my one good thing is somewhat weather related. We had, I think, probably the latest freeze on record, so I got all my tomatoes in. And they had a pretty good crop before it was 19 degrees earlier this week. So
Oh,
we had no freeze and then a really good one. But I have a really nice tomato crop slowly ripening in my basement. And so from there, I am, as Michelle said, the executive director of the Beaverhead Trails Coalition. I've been doing this for about a year, but have lived in Dillon for 17 or 18 years and have been involved in nonprofit work off and on for the bulk of that. And some of that has intersected in the past with the Beaverhead Trails Coalition and some of those partnerships. So I do have a little slideshow just to help keep me on track. I'm going to go through the history of the Beaverhead Trails Coalition and talk through some of our projects and how those partnerships worked to bring those things to fruition and how we have changed and evolved through time, both with partnerships and projects. Okay, let's see.
great. And I think you should be able to share, but let me know if there's a problem.
Okay, let's see.
Looks
Does
good.
that look like an opening page of a slideshow? All
Yeah.
right, so we are the Beaverhead Trails Coalition, and it started in 2009. Oh, it's not letting me click. Oh, there it goes. Yep. We started in 2009, and it was really just three people coming together. It was an orthopedic surgeon, a nurse, and the county planner wanting to create walkability and bikeability in the town of Dillon. And they really started that focus by looking at the school. The first grant they got was for starting a walking school bus program at the school. What that is essentially you designate a couple of routes and get volunteers to sign up to walk with kids to school every day or 3 days a week or however you want to do it to get kids moving and create awareness over safe walking and biking routes within a community. So that's how it started. And from there, they got some big grant funding to improve intersections around the school to make them safer. And the projects just kind of continued to snowball. People were really excited about the possibility of improving walking both in town and then potentially out of town. And the community that just embraced the group and they continued to grow. And so one of the earliest, after they started the walking and biking, people said, oh, we have this M up on the hill, which I don't know if Idaho is the same way. Any town in Montana, most of them have a letter on the hill for the high school. But if there's any university, there is an M on the hill for the Montana University system. So we have the University of Montana Western, there's an M up on the hill right outside of town. And people said, hey, we'd really love to be able to hike to that M. Can you guys put in a trail? And the access to that was on private ground. So the Trails Coalition worked with the county, and that private landowner is one of our first partnerships to put in an easement and then create a trail to that M. And the way that worked is the county holds the easement. We kind of help broker that agreement. And then we rallied the troops as a nonprofit to get that trail actually put in. And then from there, that project just kept snowballing. People said, well, it's great we can get to the M, but we would really like to hike further. So at that point, they talked to the additional private landowners about easements and they just weren't interested. And a couple community members said, well, we really want this to happen, so we'll donate some funding. Let's just buy that land. And from there, we started purchasing properties to create a trail system for the community, and have since that started in 2015. We just celebrated the 10-year anniversary of our first land purchase. And since then, we have purchased 1,154. And then actually, I should have said my good thing for today is we're closing on one last little piece of land up there for 20 more acres of land. So we'll have 1,174 acres of land that's directly adjacent to Dillon, that exists solely to provide open space and trails for the community of Dillon. And the way that has been funded has been through a lot of partnerships. There have been many large private donations. There have been a lot of grant funding that board members have taken it upon themselves to write those grants. And through that, we built, the website only says like 12 miles of trail. I was training for a long run this summer, so I said, I'm going to run every trail on the system in one day to see how much we actually have. And I kind of started on the outside and worked in, and I got to 15.5 miles, and then I had run out of time for the day. So I think we have close to 17 miles of trail out there now. And that has been built. A lot of it was an old grazing property, so a lot of it had been built just on old cow trails. And then through partnerships with Forest Service and BLM volunteers. One of our best partnerships is actually with our local DNRC, which is the Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation fire crew. So every spring, if they have time, as part of their training for their firefighters, they build trail for us. And so those firefighters are building trail for us for free, which is great. And in turn, they're getting hands-on training on, I mean, what they say to me is, well, digging line is basically the same as digging a trail. And then this year, they also cleared out a bunch of old dead cottonwoods for me to work on SAW certification. So that has been a long time partnership and continues to be something that is really mutually beneficial to all of us. Let's see. And then, I went through most of this high trails. So we're continuing to work on this high trails project. And one of the interesting things about this project that fosters different forms of community is, one, it's providing a trail system, but two, the area that we are utilizing had been historically used for grazing and not necessarily sustainable grazing. One of the last pieces of land we purchased had been used, sorry, I'm trying to see. Oh, I didn't put a photo of that in there. Had been used as a feedlot. And we were able to, the grazing lease finally ran out. And so we were able to access that. And it's going to be our secondary large trailhead site, but it had been used as a feedlot. We fundraised and grant funded and had actually a local donor provide a big bulk of money to remove over 3,500 cubic yards of manure and completely resculpt the area. There were burnt out cars in there, unending trash. It was really an eyesore. And also it was in a gully that if we did have a large rain event, all of that was going to wash directly into the Beaverhead River. So it's not only a trail system, but also something we look at as an area to provide education and opportunities for land conservation work. We work closely with the BLM. They have a small section of property that's surrounded by ours, but then we also were able to connect to BLM property through land purchases. So through our project, now the public has access essentially from Dillon all the way out into the BLM and Forest Service, and they could go up and over the Pioneer Mountains. Really funding and planning is just we can build unending trails out there. So we partner with those federal land land agencies a lot. Another great partner we have utilized, and we have a project coming up with them, is the Nature Conservancy. They have a group in Dillon called the Southwest Montana Sagebrush Partnership. And that group exists as kind of a separate coalition of folks from the Nature Conservancy, the Conservation District, and others to create a resource base for landowners to manage their sage steppe ecosystems. And through that, they provide things like conifer removal, cheatgrass treatment, etc. They're going to work with us to do a demonstration pilot project for utilizing drone weed spraying on cheatgrass infested areas. And we're going to spray our first polygons sometime this month. So being on the lookout for groups like that are looking to do educational projects. It's not only good for us, but also good for our community. And our location really facilitates essentially an outdoor educational space that's accessible year round. If there are different conferences or things throughout the year in Dillon, looking at land management, we say, hey, we are happy to be your learning ground. Come out, look at what we've done, look at what we have. If you have project ideas that you would like to try, we're happy to look at working with you on that. And really just being open to those opportunities has helped foster a lot of those relationships. Let me see, my final relationship I'll talk about on the hive trails that we use regularly is Dillon is home to the Montana Youth Challenge program, which is, don't quote me on this because I'm sure I'll get it wrong, but I think it's funded somewhat through the Montana National Guard. It's like almost like a pre-military training opportunity for students, high school students who have gotten in trouble. So it's an opportunity for kids that are not thriving in high school, maybe have, it's my understanding, often it's like either you can go to juvenile detention or you can go to the Youth Challenge program. It helps them get their GED. It's a very structured program. And as part of that, they do a lot of community service. Our role in that is we have a couple board members that work as mentors for them. And then they come up weekly and help us with different projects. So everything from picking up trash to helping pull weeds, to helping place signs, or we host a annual trail run and they help flag runners. They do all kinds of things. And so I always say I've used them for years off and on in different nonprofits, and it's about us getting a benefit of having volunteers able to do work, and for them it's also a benefit of having the opportunity to be outside with positive adults doing positive things in the landscape and for the community. So really is a beneficial to everyone. And then the other arm of our group, besides the high trails, is the in-town trails. So Dillon is a small community of about 5,000 people. Probably like many rural communities, there is not in our county or town actually a designated parks or recreation program through either organized government. So there's no line item funding for any parks, any trails, any recreation through any of our governments. So that becomes a pretty big gap when you're looking at trying to provide outdoor space and walkability and bikeability. So we try to fill that gap. One of the things we've done is looked at areas that need safe travel. And through that, one of the areas we identified is called Noble Avenue. And it's a common thoroughfare people use to get to and from the school. And it runs right along the golf course. It's a fairly busy street. There was no sidewalk, no shoulder. It was really a pretty dangerous place to be. So we began fundraising and used grants to create a half-mile trail there. It's a gravel trail, and continue to maintain that twice a year. And so that is within city limits. We work closely with the city to get that planned. But then we funded the work and then continue to organize the maintenance of that trail, the weeds, tree trimming, etc., twice a year. I talked about the walking school bus a little bit. Another project we worked on is this Normal Street Bridge. So again, this is something we work closely with the city of Dillon on, and this is the Dillon Canal. It services a lot of the agricultural irrigation in the area, and there had been a historical walking bridge over this canal that just fell into disrepair, and the city deemed it was unsafe and eventually pulled it out in the early 2020s. A lot of the community really was disappointed in this. It connects, this isn't the best picture, but it connects old historical Dillon neighborhoods with the University of Montana Western. And so we have fundraised, it's about $100,000, and just got this bridge put in the last couple months, and are actually having a ribbon cutting on it at the end of this week. But just another really good example of working with the city to make sure we were following all their regulations, and also the Dillon Canal Company making sure that the way we were putting this bridge in wasn't going to impede the water flow, etc. And then putting this canal in. And then now the university is actually working with, they have a rural Fridays program for all the small rural schools that the kids come down, and there's a small pocket park on one side of the bridge. So they're working to figure out what can we put in this pocket park, talking about sustainable landscaping, talking about things like bug hotels and habitats. And so really utilizing it as an educational space, as well as just a functional bridge space for the community. So let's see, some of our key partnerships are, of course, our local government. Both the city and the county have been very good to work with. Like many rural small towns, they're like, we don't have a budget to do anything. We'll work with you the best we can to get things done. Trails we have improved, or streets we've improved, we work with them to continue to say, hey, can you make sure that our curbs are painted the way they need to be painted? Hey, can you make sure that this bike lane is striped in every year? The BLM I talked about. I'll talk about FWP, and one of those projects that was pretty fun to work through. And let's see, yeah, so FWP, another project we worked through was the Cornell Park fishing access site. And this is a very funny loop for me. Let's see, it was probably in 2018 or 2019, I was actually working for the Beaverhead Watershed Committee. And we were going through planning process, talking about, okay, where are some projects that can be done? We need projects that will benefit the community. And selfishly, for those of you that work in nonprofits, sometimes you need projects that are really visible. So for things that just help people understand this is the work we do, especially for natural resources groups, a lot of what they do is way out in the middle of nowhere and no one ever sees it. So one of those that we identified was a small park and fishing access right on the Beaverhead River on the edge of Dillon. And that park, when we got to looking, was actually privately owned. So I called the landowner and he said, well, I don't want that property. You can just have it. And I said, well, the Beaverhead Watershed doesn't really own property. Like we can't have it. But let me look around. And at the time I called the Beaverhead Trails Coalition because their high trail system borders this park. And I said, hey, this park really we need to do some riverbank stabilization work. Can you help us out with this? And they actually took the Trails Coalition at that time, said, oh, this is a little bit out of our purview, we'll look at it. But they jumped on board to take ownership of this park and then really work with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks to create a fishing access and do all the river restoration on that site. And then it's since been, the Trails Coalition has transferred ownership to Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. So one of the things that I think is so unique about Beaverhead Trails Coalition, and that makes it work so well, is that they have an overarching mission, but they're also very responsive to what the community wants and needs. So if opportunities arise for a project that maybe we hadn't identified, but that makes good sense for our community and falls under the broad purview of our mission, we're more than happy to jump on board to make that happen. So that this fishing access site is one of those success stories, where we don't generally develop parks or fishing access, but we were able to hold land in trust. We were able to get grant funding to complete this project. And then we were able to work with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks to make that accessible for the community in perpetuity. And then let's see. So I've talked through a lot of this before, like why do we do what we do, and how does that impact our community and our partnerships? And I think just keeping that a high view of why are we doing what we're doing? It's so that people have access to trails and to being able to move. And I think keeping that at the forefront opens doors to different partnerships everywhere from your federal land agencies to health officials to schools, and just opens doors on various projects. And then you can see this is my trail ambassador. That's my dog. He's a 160-pound Newfoundland who only comes out to help me at the trails in the winter because the rest of the year is much too hot. But building partnerships is also about just having that open, friendly demeanor that says, yes, we want to work with you. We're happy to work with you and do what we can. Oh, I did have a picture of, this is the trailhead I talked about earlier, pre-cleanup. So this is what we were walking into. And 2 years later, now we have completely cleaned all that out. They've resculpted the area, and now we're working to fund a bike skills park out there. And it's creating new partnership opportunities. We haven't really gotten much into the specific the mountain biking world, and in learning more and more about it, we're meeting new partners, including a new local bike shop, the Southwest Montana Mountain Bike Association, and others that will help us continue to build and grow this project. So like I said, excuse me, over the next decade, we'll continue to work with longtime partners such as the DNRC building trails, the BLM. We're working on that connection right now and doing community and partner outreach to talk about, as we develop trails out on that public land, what does that look like? Completing the trailheads. And then one of the things we're looking to do right now is to reinvigorate our partnership with the county and start looking at, as the West grows, a lot of what people moving in are looking for is active transport and active communities. And in doing so, we need to think about our development, how we're developing our subdivisions, how people can move to and from and within our community. And right now, everything's connected by 2-lane roads that don't have shoulders. So we're really looking to partner with the county, partner with planners, and then realistically start partnering with probably some of the development folks and realtors to say, hey, we need to create spaces that people can bike and walk, and how do we get these routes put into our planning? How do we pay for those? How do we work together to create that type of community? So yeah, we have been going now for 15 or 16 years, and really, I guess our story of partnership is one of evolution, right? You start from having a walking school bus to building one trail up a hillside to owning nearly 1,200 acres, developing fishing access sites, building bridges, and a lot of other things in between. So just continuing to be open to new partnerships, I think, and continuing to foster and maintain the old ones as well.
Jamie, thank you. This is super interesting. From a lot of standpoints, and I, of course, have a million questions, but before I ask any of my million questions, I just want to first thank you again for joining us today and for telling us more about the work of the Beaverhead Trails Coalition. And I want to throw it open to you all. Questions, thoughts, like, aha, that made me think about this, or we're doing a similar thing, anything you want to talk about.
This is David in Bonners Ferry. I am just blown away at how much you've been able to do. That's really impressive, really inspirational. So I really appreciate hearing your story.
Thank